Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for ADramofOutlander.com for all things Outlander, from the Dinah Gabaldon book series to the Stars TV series and everything in between. This is episode 101, Surrender, season 3, episode 2. Hello! I am glad to be with you again this week. And I want to start off, before talking about the episode, to discuss the giveaway that I alluded to in the last podcast. Well, I'm giving away an official Outlander scarf from Celtic Croft, and it's in the Mackenzie tartan. It is beautiful lamb's wool, nice and soft and snuggly. And now that the weather, at least in half of the world, is getting cooler, you might enjoy it. It is a worldwide giveaway, so if somebody in the lower half of the world wins, you're going to have to put it away until next fall. I know you are going into spring right now. Might not need a lamb's wool scarf. Go on to ADramofOutlander.com, click on the post that has the giveaway in it, and inside it, it has the terms, conditions, rules, etc., which are few, and you click on the link to enter. And it will be running through Saturday night before episode 3 airs, and I will announce it on Sunday. And we will go from there. Awesome. Go and enter. It's a good prize, and I'd like to keep it for myself, but I'm not. I'm giving it to one of you. And I also want to say, wow, thank you so much for listening. I mean, I know I say that every single week, but season 3, episode 1, podcast, my podcast 100 is gangbusters. Absolutely. Incredible amounts of listens and downloads and new listeners. And thank you for sticking through the book read-alongs. And for those of you who are back for the show, welcome back. It's an incredible process to see how many of you are downloading and listening, or watching and listening on YouTube. I'm impressed and I'm stunned by the numbers. So I'm grateful to all of you, because the reason I spend the time doing this week in and week out, I have not missed a week since season 2 began in April of 2016. I have been giving you some listening every single week since then. And I do it because of you guys. I love doing it for me. It's fun, but I could podcast on any topic. And I choose to stick around and do this. And I hopefully will be doing it until the show catches up to the books and we are 8 or 9, 10 seasons in. I will do it the whole time. And as soon as season 3, the TV show, ends, after episode 13, then I will prep us for the next book. And I will be starting the book on January 1st, but there will be episodes in between the end of season 3 and the start of the actual read-along. But I just want to prep you. We'll be doing an overview and kind of getting ready and excited for the next season. Now, when we left off on episode 1 for Jamie, it was right after Culloden and the routing of the Scots Jacobites. And it was a few days later, when he was sent home by Lord Melton, Lord John's older brother, back to Lallybroch for that family honor, the debt of honor. And that was the closing scene of seeing Jamie arrive at Lallybroch near death. But it was 1746. And this episode opens in 1752, so we have leapt ahead in Jamie's time 6 years. Now, I don't plan on doing a blow-by-blow of the entire episode and reviewing it like that. I'll be giving my input and thoughts of the whole episode, but of certain parts that stood out the most to me. And I'm excited that there will definitely be Outlander Science Club material for Karen Doherty, Outlander Medicine, and me to tackle together. So we will be giving you awesome science and medicine bonus content every single week. That's our plan to go with the episode, because like I keep saying, we don't speak about the books and the TV series directly when the TV series is running, because they're separate universes, right? So we don't exactly know what's coming in the episodes and if it is going to have the same science or medicine that the book does. Like the first episode, I'm still working on a Twilight Sleep episode as a bonus content that I will put out from episode 1. But I didn't know that was coming. That wasn't expected. And in episode 2, we can look at a few different things. I know that Karen is working on an awesome post on phantom limb because of what Ian said and what Fergus was experiencing, right? So be sure to check out Outlander Medicine. That is her website. And Outlander Science Club is on Facebook as well. And we'll be posting all of our things from her and me on there as well, and discussing all different aspects of Outlander Science and Medicine with you. So please go check that out as well, and check her out. So the key thing here of jumping 6 years ahead, what the heck has Jamie been doing, right? Well, we learned that he's called the Dunbonnet, which is his nickname. And it's because of the brown hat that he wears. Well, ironically, it doesn't cover his hair at all. His big old bushy red mane was still showing. I think the purpose of the hat was to cover his hair so he wasn't noticeable amongst all the greenery, right? I know, artistic license. But he's known as the Dunbonnet, and the current captain of Dragoons is hot and heavy on wanting to capture this traitor, Red Jamie, who he knows is Dunbonnet as well. And we see that in the opening credits. He's living in a cave. He's not living in the house. And the cave is on the property, but you can't really see it from the outside. So it's the perfect place for him to be able to hide out. Okay. Now, one of the great issues I had with this episode that struck me as so bizarre, number 1, his hair was down. Okay, that seems weird. Number 2, he keeps coming out during daytime, when there's dragoons still swarming the area, and he keeps being outside and not hiding in his cave. And we don't really get to see him living in the cave. We don't get to get the sense of his isolation from his family. What we see in this episode is that he has tons of interaction with them, it seems. Now, of course, we don't know what it was like the other 6 years, but we kind of have to presume, based on the amount of interaction, he was coming and going more frequently than expected. But the coming out during the day was really, really odd to me. It rang strange. And especially in Scotland, I mean, in the summer, it gets dark very late because of where it's located on the globe. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe it was supposed to be summertime, so it was light even very late at night. That might be the answer. I'll have to ask the Outlander writers. That just occurred to me. But we did get the sense of his desolation and how crippled he was emotionally. He didn't speak hardly at all. His hair was long, his beard was ratty, He was dirty. It didn't look like he came down to do normal things. He brought them a deer that he killed. When Ian got taken away and arrested again erroneously, he came to help Jenny with the books and to get things prepared because she had her hands full, right? So there were those types of things that he was doing. But his mannerisms showed that desolation and his isolation from other people. He wouldn't talk to any of them, really. And even when Fergus went to visit him in the cave, he only spoke the words that were necessary. And at one point when he had killed the deer and brought it back to the house, he sees Claire in the courtyard. Or he thinks he does. It's Jenny, but he's hallucinating her. So we're looking at 6 full years, and he's still so connected to Claire. And the other aspect of this is Jenny's undying devotion to her brother being happy. Okay. She's determined that he should be married. She's determined that he should have a family. He's living in a cave. Okay. He can't even do regular work. He's still wanted as a treasonous Jacobite, and he was an officer, so he's pretty high level. They never did get Bonnie Prince Charlie in real life. So Jamie is one of those high dollar, high ticket traders. So all these events unfold on top of each other in a seemingly perfect stew and perfect storm that lead Jamie to come up with that plan to have his family turn him in for the reward money. Because we see way at the beginning of the episode that there's that reward poster. And I need to look and see how much it said it was for. Okay. The poster didn't say how much it was for, or I could not read the fine print from taking a screen capture. But it looked like a substantial purse of money. So we see him desolated, crippled emotionally, missing Claire still. He's just haunted. And he's like the Walking Dead. He's a ghost amongst his own family. He's not really a living, even though he's alive. And there's something I've always said for years as a healthy childbirth advocate, that the idea that a mother and baby are alive is no sign of health. Well, I'd like to say alive also is no sign of living. And that's Jamie. And it's desperate and sad and horrible to see that raw sense and that lack of caring for oneself. I mean, he didn't have to look like a caveman just because he was living in a cave. You could almost smell him, like his clothing seemed dirty, and he seemed unclean, for lack of a better way of phrasing it. So he ends up going through the process of cleaning this deer, and then we see him gutting a fish in his cave, and he's almost animalistic. He's almost gone to the very base of humanity. He's surviving, and that's all he's doing. He eats, he sleeps, he barely talks. We get the idea that he reads. There's a lot of books in the cave. And he helps to do whatever he can to procure food and to protect his family at Lallybroch. But he seems like he's mostly dead. He's just, nobody's really home. It's pretty tragic. Jenny tries to foist Mary McNab on him, saying that she's of childbearing age still. And Mary McNab in this episode is pretty highlighted and amazing, like crazy amazing. She's everywhere. She's our girl Friday. She's steps in and does everything necessary. We see her interact with Jamie several times. I don't know whether or not that would have been normal in those years since Mrs. Crook died. So we see this massive highlighting and setup of Mary McNab as somebody important and somebody who's vital in their lives, but also within his circumstance. And she does put herself at risk in a couple of ways during the episode. But Jenny, and I will get to her circumstances here in a minute, but she's in an unusual situation and she's still trying to set him up. And she asks him how long it's been since he laid with a woman. And that is not something he wants to talk about. And he actually calls her Janet. Tells her not to go there. And she can't understand it being 6 years and he doesn't want anything to do with another woman. And again, he's a criminal. He's like a high ticket trader. But Jenny, man, she's got like some pie in the sky idea that he should have a woman and a family, even in the set of circumstances he's in. It doesn't seem really reasonable, does it? But one of the most amazing things that happens, and I'm going to get to Mary McNab next because she plays into him leaving with a gift and leaving well cared for and feeling grounded, and she has a small way of helping him feel alive again and back in this world, and not 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in another world holding on to Claire. So they make this agreement. He's going to be turned in for the money, even though Jenny thinks it's a horrible idea. She wants to talk him out of it. She's angry at him for it. He doesn't want to put them at risk anymore. The captain of dragoons is not going to stop searching for Red Jamie or searching for the Dunbonnet. He's not going to stop harassing them and tossing their house or having Ian arrested, even though there's no evidence of Red Jamie or the Dunbonnet. And we have a tragedy with Fergus that pushes Jamie over the edge. He has a breakdown, right? When Fergus's hand is cut off by the Corporal McGregor. And this really jolts Jamie into a sense of purpose and reality. And if they turn him in, multiple things will happen. They will get the reward. They will stop getting harassed because the redcoats will be convinced that they have no truck with Jamie being a traitor, that they don't support him whatsoever. So he's acting in a way to be protective, proactive, and to help them survive. So after the plan is in place, Mary McNab comes to him in the cave with food that Jenny sends her with as his last meal and all the equipment to give him a proper shave and a haircut. Because he can't look like he's been living in no cave or look like the Dunbonnet, right? So she does. She gives him a meal and she shaves him and cuts his hair. I can't imagine how long it would take to straight shave a face with all that hair. You'd have to trim it first and then shave it. Probably was an hour's worth of grooming that she did on him. But think about that. She was the first person, not his sister, who touched him, who was a woman, in 6 years. And prior to that, it only had been Claire. I mean, Leary had tried to kiss him, but she's insubstantial when it looks at his history. So she was offering him this tender touch, this loving and generous touch to help him bring his humanity back online, to bring him back to the land of the living where he had been a ghost, even though he was still flesh and blood. And he goes to clean everything up and sort of rinse off in the river, which, man, burr. And he returns and she's standing in her shift. So she has an additional gift for him. The gift of her physically and the gift of her emotionally. Now, at first, Jamie's a bit offended by it and taken aback. But she stops and explains to him gently what she's doing and why. She wants to give him something to take with him. She wants him to feel whole and cared for. And the love of a sister or a brother-in-law, Fergus, nieces and nephews, they can't do that for him. Only the love of a woman. For a straight man, I will say. For a gay man, this would not be effective. For a lesbian, it would, for sure. But that physical connection and caring, man, that can fix many ills. That can help prepare you for what's to come when it's so difficult. And knowing he's going to be locked up for years. It's already been 6 years since he's had any physical contact with a woman. How many more years will it be locked up? 6, 8, 10? That's a long time without physical affection or passion of any kind. And it doesn't matter how good you are at like self-pleasure and release. It's not the same as mingling with another human, mingling body and mind. And for someone like Jamie, spirit. So she offers him this tender gesture. And she hasn't been with anyone in a long time either. Not since her husband. And the thing I liked about how Mary McNab is she wasn't hot for sleeping with Jamie. She wasn't trying to marry him. She wasn't trying to like get in his bed this whole time. She wasn't pursuing him. Jenny said nothing to her about this. She came up with it and thought, what can I do? What is something only I can offer? And she did. And it made him cry. And he accepted it. I mean, I think there's such dignity and wonder in that. And I think, yeah, I couldn't imagine if I had to go off to war, if I knew I was going off to do something terrifically difficult that I might not survive, if someone came to me with that kind of depth and warmth and generosity, yeah, I don't think I would turn it down. I think I would accept it for what it was. And he's not married. He's widowed in his timeline. So he's not doing anything wrong. And so this is what mature connection looks like. That's really lovely, I think. What's your feedback on that? So do you think Jamie moving forward and going to prison, we presume prison because Ian said that they're not hanging traitors anymore. Will he survive it? How will he get along? How long will he be there? Will this burden of Claire in him, that missing, that heartbreak, will that soften? Or will it maintain its hold on him? He and Ian were talking. Well, Ian has lost his leg from fighting in France. Way back. We know that's why he has his wooden leg. And then Fergus losing his hand, which we'll discuss that whole thing here in a minute. And Fergus was having phantom pain. Ian has phantom pain and feeling. But he said it's nothing compared to losing a heart. And he brought that to Jamie. Like that Jamie had had his heart taken out of his body. It was gone because Claire left. And that was a sucker punch, man. I was like, oh. I don't know if you felt it, but I did. I'm pretty amazed because Kenney was given an enormous task here. There was so much to cover. I think it could have been better served in 2 episodes. I mean, there could have been 1 episode of Jamie and all the things he was going through for a full hour, and then there could have been one with Claire and Frank and what her process was and her surrendering to her new way of life. He had to literally surrender himself to go to prison for his family, but she also did acts of surrender. And she had to surrender to the life of being a stay-at-home mother. She had to surrender to this marriage that she found herself back in, right? They both had to do it. But I think they could have done 2 episodes because this was so much input. And my second watch of it took me 2 hours to watch because I was taking such extensive notes. Even though I'm not going over them line by line with you, it's a lot of typed notes that I ended up taking. It's multiple pages, something like 4 pages of notes, typed, inch margins. And it wasn't even me putting every bit of detail in. It was just writing down what happened with some thoughts with it. So it played like everything meant something, like it just rapid fire. This is a plot device to move this forward here. The storyline is moving here. This is going here. But there are some things that were simple foreshadowing for later, but a lot of it was like things to come in the episode itself. I mean, I'm only going to stay at Lallybroch and then I will move to Boston. And it was a nice, smooth transition between Claire's time and Jamie's time. I really enjoyed that. The director, Jennifer Getzinger, did a really good job not chopping it and jumping us too rapidly. We got to stay in a place for a while. Even though Claire and Frank's were smaller, they were shorter periods than Jamie's because there was so much material to cover for him. It still felt like there was fluidity going on and like we could actually transition back and forth well. So let's look at our little mouthy Fergus. From the get-go in this episode, he was the one who was harnessing the 3 amigos between Rabbie and young Jamie and himself. He was mouthy. He was in everybody's face. He was trying to be commanding. He wanted to do more. He was pushing Jamie, pushing the other boys. You know, he found the pistol that I'm not sure if it had been Jamie's. It couldn't have been. It had to have been Ian and Jenny's pistol that was hidden in the dovecote where they have the doves. And they were talking, he wants to learn how to shoot. Well, guns, again, articles of proscription, guns were completely outlawed for Highlanders. So Fergus playing with this gun was not a happy thing. And then the first time the Redcoats come and they harass Ian and take him away and arrest him again, the boys had to hide the gun again. But Fergus is already being mouthy. It's amazing. I mean, the kid is like a teenager and he's on the ball. He tells McGregor, the corporal, that he's a traitor. Okay, he's a lowlander. And we have to remember that Culloden was not an effort of independence whatsoever. It was about who was rightful king. And the Jacobites, by and large, were Catholics who believed in the Stuart line. Now, if you actually go through and look at the history, James and then Charles were the rightful heirs. They were rightfully in line. And the Hanovers had taken over. So there was a reasonable claim, absolutely, to the throne. However, people think of it as an us against them, and it's really the Jacobites against everybody else. And plenty of Scots did not believe in that fight, in that uprising, and they fought for the British troops because they were already British by then. They're part of the United Kingdom. The interesting kind of thought on this, though, and they did point this out in the show, was that the English didn't really like them either, whether they wore the red coats or not. And I think that's true. After our visit there and going through the military museums and watching the videos and reading everything, the Scots were looked at as dispensable and disposable, even when serving in his king's or her queen's armed forces. They were never looked at as equals. I'm talking moving into last century. Not considered to be equal to the English. They were still considered barbarians, no matter how they served. So Fergus was just on fire, so he gets in a fight there. Okay? And then he takes... and then when Jamie is cleaning the deer, he's getting all mouthy again and wanting to go and break Ian out of the jail he's in and kill McGregor and the captain of dragoons. Okay, so he's on fire there. He's getting mouthy with Jamie and Jenny. Now, is he simply trying to get attention and getting Jamie to react? Maybe. But he seems to be pretty much in everybody's face at the moment. He takes the pistol to the cave to see Jamie. Jamie tells him to put it back. There should be no more fighting, no wars, and guns are outlawed. Fergus is mad at Jamie when he leaves. And he calls Jamie a coward. So we're getting a build-up and seeing what this kid is doing and seeing what his methodology is. And it's really talking a lot of trash at this point. So Jenny's in labor. And the fantastic trio, the three amigos of Rabbie and young Jamie and Fergus, see a raven. Now that's supposed to be a sign of death to come. It's a bad omen. So Fergus, who's the ringleader here, gets the wild idea of running back and digging out the pistol and shooting the raven to protect the baby, so the baby will be born alive. Now, again, the Highlands are crawling with redcoats still, and with a captain of dragoons that is chomping at the bit, and he wants to make his mark in his portion of the campaign of the cleansing, right? So, in a place where there's not supposed to be any weapons by the Highlanders, you hear a random shot, and there's no other noise, no planes, no trains, no automobiles. I would think you could hear a shot ring out from pretty far. Well, McGregor, and another scout hear it. I think it was McGregor. Anyway, they hear the shot. Jamie's come to the house to do the records since Ian's been taken away because rents are coming. And he has an encounter with Mary McNab, another one there. Anyhow, he goes in and meets the baby after Mary takes the gun, and he has reamed Fergus a new one because he told him they shouldn't have gotten the gun. And Fergus explains that he was doing it to save the baby from death because of the raven. Well, Mary takes the gun to go hide it in the house. And then she kind of like yells at Rabbie. Jamie meets the baby. He's talking to Jenny. And that's when Jenny's going on her spiel about him needing a woman. She's like, I don't know, minutes postpartum, half an hour. And she's sitting here trying to rag on her brother about getting a date. Oh, Janet Murray. And so the dragoons come back. And they toss Jenny's room. And finally, they notice, at least the captain does, that she's just given birth. There's evidence in the room. And then Jenny on the fly makes up the lie that the baby died, wasn't born breathing. I'm going to post a link to neonatal resuscitation practice. Because sometimes babies are born and they're alive, but they're not prompted on their own to start breathing. So there's something called neonatal resuscitation, and I will be posting a link on that and thinking about doing a little Outlander Science Club action on what we do with babies who don't breathe on their own at delivery. Anyway, so they had to come up with this lie on the fly. She says the midwife took the baby to clean for burial, and the captain is just frothing. McGregor doesn't believe it. He's glad the baby's dead. One less Scot, one less Jacobite. And Mary McNab comes in and saves the day and gives the captain the gun. And says it had been her husband's, and she shot the raven in order to save the baby, but it was too late. It was great. It was a great lie. All the while, Jamie is hiding in a room that connects to Jenny's room with the baby, with his finger in the baby's mouth so as not to get caught. And he's standing there holding this minutes-old baby wrapped in a blanket and a dirk in his hand. So Fergus, and his wild idea, why don't they throw rocks at the thing to get it to leave? Did they have to shoot it? I don't think so. I will say that is from the book, The Raven Getting Shot. A different character was used. I liked the change of it, but that was something directly from the books. And Kenney did not dream this up, or Ron or other writers in the writer's room. And then Fergus, after Ian is brought back and dropped off, and Ian handles it beautifully. But Fergus is there in the courtyard with the goats when they come back and drop him back at the house. And he and McGregor have like this side-eye thing going on, and they're sneering at each other. And later on, Fergus wants to lead them away from the cave. So he has a bright idea, like teenage boys would. He knows they're waiting and they're watching. That he leaves and he's taunting them. He's yelling things and he's doing hand gestures that are very, very rude. And he's having them chase him throughout the forest. I mean, it's visually stunning. And Jamie hears this action going on, and he's hiding, but he can see what's happening. And he's, thinking to himself and saying to himself for Fergus to stop taunting them. And McGregor gets so incensed that when they catch up to Fergus, because another redcoat and two redcoats come up on horses and block Fergus in, that he actually cuts his hand off with his sword. And the private under McGregor wants to do something because Fergus will die. Yes, there's massive spurting blood. It was a little bit Monty Python kind of spurting blood, even though it's realistic. It did make me chuckle. I can't imagine the difficulty and getting that scene to go. How hard that was to pull off and make it look realistic. That's some serious CGI and makeup and camera work. It was pretty great. So as soon as the soldiers leave, then Jamie comes out, puts pressure on it, and he says he's seen Claire handle this. Well, his lady. And he put, his belt was a tourniquet on his arm to stop the bleeding, and they put pressure on it, and he carried him back to the house to be mended. So Fergus's mouth, man, he's got a big mouth and a chicken butt, right? But he really got under McGregor's skin, and it cost him his hand. Ultimately, he believed he now became a man of leisure in one swoop, because Jamie had promised him back in Paris if he ever lost a hand while doing work for him, he would take care of him the rest of his life. And Jamie said he would honor it. But the unique thing that happened in this exchange was that Jamie had said that it gave him something to fight for. Because Jamie totally broke down with Jenny because he didn't defend Fergus. He didn't try and stop it. Well, he couldn't because he would have been dead. The whole family would have been dead. And he broke down hard. And it kind of broke him out of his daze, of his shell that he was hiding behind. And he said it basically gave him purpose again. And that's when he decided that he needed to go to prison and just turn himself in. Like, this was no way to live. It was putting his family in harm's way. And Fergus, would he have done that unnecessarily? Probably not. He was using 13-year-old-ish boy bravado. I guess, let's see, how old would he be? I guess he was supposed to be around 16 or 17. He didn't seem that old to me at the time. But somewhere in there, he's a teenage boy. So that sort of wraps up Fergus. So now Fergus is one-handed. And Fergus stays with us a very long time. So, interesting. Okay, we've already talked about Bossy Jenny, right? I know we are 40-some minutes into this podcast, and I haven't even gotten to Frank and Claire. I haven't talked about Ian. I'll get there, I promise. So Jenny was pregnant because she just spends her time pregnant. She had her baby. And my thing that I love so much about what she said to the captain and the corporal was after a fearsome birth. That was just a great description. And hey, now Laura Donnelly has gotten to birth twice. I mean, we only heard her this time. We didn't actually see her, but we know she's good at it, right? But so what is she going to do in the future? Like, she is so hell-bent on getting Jamie married off when if he gets out of prison, when he gets out of prison. Like, is she going to continue to try and marry him off and pressure him, even though his heart is not in it? We'll just have to see. And Ian Murray, this is one of many times he's been arrested, and likely in the future he'll be arrested again, even with Jamie gone. We'll have to see how that unfolds. And so now Jamie has gone to prison, and so Jenny is raising Fergus. So Fergus becomes her adopted child for the most part. Fergus is part of her family, and just like Rabbi lives there, but Mary McNab is still alive. But he's part of the household. And so Fergus is more like a brother to the other Murray children. So this was a lot. Did you feel Jamie's isolation? How did that play for you? What did you think of Jenny's behavior and how she was, brother, and she was totally in his face? Do you think she was desperate to try and reach him? And what did you think of the, extensive highlighting of Mary McNab and her given so much importance in this episode? Way more than Jenny and Ian, even though Jenny birthed and it's their property and all of that. I think she was given equal importance to Jamie. I mean, and seeing what she ended up doing in the end, it still was pretty high honor how Anne wrote her into this episode. Interesting. Now, the other thing, did you catch the portrait on the wall when Jamie was leaving Jenny's bedroom with baby Ian? Baby Ian! Oh, by the way, baby Ian! How exciting is that? There was a portrait on the wall. And I was trying to remember if that was supposed to be Ellen. I thought Ellen would be down in the entryway, and Bree and Ellen are supposed to look a lot alike, even though Ellen had dark hair. I don't think that portrait looked anything like adult Bree, but I want to get your feedback on that. Remember to give feedback. You can email me at contact@adramaofoutlander.com. You can call into the listener line at 719-425-9444, and I will include your feedback on the next podcast. Or you can comment on the post that I have the podcast in, or on YouTube, if you listen there. And also, please, please, please show up on Wednesday night. Come over to Twitter. You don't have to know how to use Twitter to follow along. We use hashtag ADOO. And we meet at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And we talk about the prior week's podcast episode, which right now is the prior week's show episode 2. So this last week was amazing. And a whole bunch of new people showed up. And it was a wild hour and a half. It was great. So please come. So did this feel like it was mass amounts of information for you? And like character development? Did you feel like it was too surfacey because there was so much information? Did you feel the depth that Anne was trying to create with Jamie's mannerisms and how he looked and nonverbal he was and his attitude? I really want to know. Because it was such a whirlwind the first time I watched it, and the second watch, and I looked for the details and took all the notes. It felt like I was watching forever because there was so much. So let's jump over to Boston, 1949. There definitely was not as much Claire and Frank and Boston time as there was Lallybroch time. That had to take more. If it was equal time, it certainly didn't feel that way to me. So we see Claire in her bed next to Frank. They're sharing a bed, okay? And it sounds like she's having a pleasurable dream. We presume she's thinking about Jamie, because it sounds like she's having an orgasm, or about to, experiencing great physical pleasure, okay? And she sees Jamie laying next to her, and she sees him walking across the room to stoke the fire, and he looks at her with that face of, I'm going to eat you up. We all want to be looked at with the, I'm going to eat you up sexy face. Absolutely. Who doesn't want that? I certainly do. And so she's in this state of pleasure in her mind, in this dream place. And the color that is used is cool and blue. It looks otherworldly, like Jamie did last week in the first episode, where when he was laying on the field and everything was in those steely tones, and it looked cold and distant and remote, and that blue and gray. Well, that's what Claire looked like when she was laying there. So it was sort of like Jamie on the battlefield. And her suffering as she laid there, much like he did in the first week. That was a nice connection, because I can already see how they're trying to connect their experiences in their own timelines, but that they're both going through the same hardships on some level, in some way. And so Claire was experiencing that. And then they pan the camera away, and there's Frank sleeping next to her. And Bree is a young baby. She's a few months old and super cute. Whoever that baby really belongs to, that's the cutest toddler ever now, because this filmed so long ago. She's surrendering to being a stay-at-home mother. It's a role she never expected to be in, that she didn't have any preparation for with how she grew up, but she's settling in. But it's not enough. And you can see in her process that she's doing her best. It's only been a few months since the birth, and she's trying. And we have a sweet little scene where she puts Brianna down in her playpen, and she rolls over and freaks herself out, and Claire picks her up and says how clever she is. And then Frank strolls in the room saying that the boiler must have broken because he was in the middle of a shower and the water went out, the hot water, and he comes in a towel. Tobias is looking good. I mean, in real life, Frank is actually my MO, like height-wise, body type, the way he looks, that's really my kind of guy. Super smart. Yeah. Earnest, which I think Frank is. Frank's a good guy. Yes, he can be selfish and all those things, but overall, he's a good guy. And he's the kind of guy I would have married, I'm sure. Not too much unlike my current husband in the good ways. So he comes out in a towel, and they're enjoying this parenting moment, and he calls the little baby Bree clever and snuggles her. And as they're enjoying this little moment in their bubble with the three of them, Claire puts her hand on his bare shoulder, his chest. And you see this flash for a moment of she's just experiencing joy in this moment, and then you see Frank's calculation go, oh, she's touching me. Oh, that feels good. Ooh, I could have sex. Do you want to have sex? And she pulls away. Like it's this quick flash between the two of them. And then he's disappointed, and she quickly readjusts and grabs the baby back and puts her facade back on. I feel sorry for Frank here. Like, he's hoping as time goes by, he's still hoping that she'll emotionally come back to him and physically come back to him as well. When we see Frank and Claire again, they're having a little dinner party with the neighbors. Remember Millie that we met in the first episode? Well, it's her and her husband. When her husband comes off the cuff and says that basically Millie's not a good cook, but her talents lie elsewhere, this huge sexual innuendo, which I'm like, really? You don't even know these people, and you're saying that? I would be horrified. I'm really open. I'm not modest, really. I'm pretty free with myself. But if my husband said that to somebody our neighbors who we were having dinner with friends, I would be mortified. Like, I would never talk about his sexual prowess at the dinner table over drinks. That's horrible. Like, I needed to be punched in the face or kicked in the shin under the table. But Frank sort of flicks an eye at Claire, and they're drinking and having a good time, and he looks at her and she smiles at him, in a genuine way. And after dinner concludes and the neighbors go home, he asks if she wants a nightcap. And I'm thinking, you guys drank all throughout dinner, before dinner with your neighbors, and now you're having a nightcap. I hope Brianna's a good sleeper. Because Claire will be a little buzzed and probably not in the greatest place to be nursing her baby, right? But they're in their living room with the fireplace there, and Claire's feeling saucy. And so she reaches down and takes off her undergarments underneath her dress, and you see her garters. And it's really funny because I screen-capped them after she dropped her undergarments on the floor. They were kind of like the little boy short pants underneath, not really underwear. And they both are like huddled together and they're looking at the floor as if this is the great mysterious unknown underpant. We have not seen this in many months or a year or years. It was funny the way they both looked at it. I know it was meant to be a sexy moment, but it cracked me up nonetheless. So Claire is feeling it. Well, she's feeling amorous. That's the point here. So she's fully dressed still. And Frank is in his clothes, but that's what zippers are for, apparently. And he picks her up and he puts her on the floor in front of the fire. And as there's no foreplay. Like, he's just in her business, okay? And he wants to look at her. She sounds like she's enjoying it, but he's asked her to look at him. Intimacy, right? Intimacy. Connection. Well, she won't open her eyes. She ignores him. And so he stops. And she asks, why are you stopping? He wants her to look at him. And he said, you never used to close your eyes this much. Or you never used to close your eyes. I want you to look at me. And she refuses. Well, I don't know about you, but during that particular activity, my eyes are not always open. I think sex feels really great, but it also is very awkward and it's funny. And no, I'm not one for like deep soul gazes. I think it's just, no, not my thing. My eyes aren't always closed, but they're often closed. But I'm also, not going to say, hey, I miss my husband. Oh, I forgot about that. I need to backtrack. So Frank is really angry at her. He totally says that when he's with her, but she's with him. And then Claire, gets upset and leaves. Well, before that, which I forgot, it's in my notes, but I must have missed it. Claire woke him up at some point when she woke up in the middle of the night, and she reached over to him and she said, I miss my husband. And then she proceeds to get on top of him. Well, I'm sure Frank was thinking she meant him, Frank. Oh, she misses me, her husband. No, she didn't lie to him. She said, I miss my husband, and she inferred it was Frank, but it wasn't Frank at all. That was cold, like cold as ice. So this morning, over coffee in bed, I said to my husband, I will never ever say to you, I miss my husband. He goes, good, because I will never say the same thing to you. We were both pretty shocked by that line. It still stuns me even to think about how brutally cold that scene came off. I was like, dang, Claire, you didn't go there. Wow, but she did. And so that gives the underpinning that they're having some intimacy and some sexuality together, but not now. Because after the episode in front of the fireplace, Frank is like, you're not going to be with me. We're not going to be together. I'm out. You're not going to look at me and connect with me and be my wife that way. We're done with that. And so it looks like he put the kibosh on that part. I mean, it's inferred, certainly inferred, but that's what it seems like. That he drew the line in the sand in front of the fireplace that night. But I think for Claire to be so cold Did you read it that way? Was that how you saw it? I miss my husband. Did she mean to be so cold? Did she just need a sexual outlet and didn't want to take care of herself? Well, I mean, wow. Frank did not deserve that. That was just a raw deal. It's better not to have sex with somebody than to have sex with somebody and to be clearly thinking about someone else. Unless you have an agreement, that is, whew. I was like, wow. And I need to ask Anne Kenney why she wrote it that way. Why was that put in there? Because I'm stunned. I'm going to send a note to the Outlander writers after the episode tonight and ask. That's one of my questions I want to ask them. Anyhow, that was brutal. Okay. Kablam! I would feel terrible if my husband had had the greatest love of his life and had lost it, and he was thinking about her every time that we were together, and he refused to even connect with me. Oh, that makes me feel icky and angry and really sick to my stomach. So bad on Claire for doing that. At least that's Frank's perception, right? And I read it the same way. That was pretty rude. Oof. So then we see Claire saying that the lines that we saw in one of the video clips that had been released, that she had loved a man and that she had done these things and she was a mother, but it wasn't enough. And that was her surrendering. She had surrendered years to this process, like the same years that Jamie had surrendered. Now, we haven't seen older Bree, but Claire looked different when she had her first day of medical school, when she met Joe Abernathy. So now she met her bestie. They became insta friends when the instructor, as well as all the other students in the class, were totally sneering at them and giving them looks and wouldn't let Claire sit down in the row next to him. That it was like she and Joe were in it against the world. And they were unicorns in the 1950s in medical school. So we have to think that Bree is somewhere around 6 years old at this point. 7, 8. I don't know. We didn't see her. So it's somewhere in that timeline. But now she's on her track to be a physician. She just was not able or capable of staying at home, and that's okay. I stayed home for a lot of years when my boys were small, and I was a stay-at-home mama, and I volunteered and did other things and did some part-time stuff here and there, but that's what I was. And I knew that was a finite prospect. I'd made the decision with my husband very seriously because I'm a woman who loves to work. I love to work. I love to produce. And I had to choose that as my quote work for the time I did it. Specifically, my husband was the sole provider because I couldn't have done both decently at all. I couldn't. I would have sucked as a mother and I would have sucked at my job. And I knew it was really important that my children were only going to be children one time in their life. That for me, it was a sacrificial part of my love that I have no resentment toward at all, but I completely understand Claire. That's how I am. And until, about 8 years ago, when I did go back to work, I worked for myself, owning my own business, and I didn't work full time until 8 years ago. So I spent till my oldest was 13. So I spent a lot of years being an absolute stay-at-home mom and then working very part-time and slowly getting back into it as my kids got old enough to be at home by themselves some, to be supervised by their brother, that sort of thing. It was a slow progress up until 8 years ago. And I'm grateful that I did it, but it wasn't enough for me. It never would be enough. And it was something my husband always knew. And it was actually things were his idea. He said, I need you to be able to take care of yourself if something happens to me. I need you to be able to take care of them. And I need you to be productive because you need to do that. I needed it. And he saw that in me. Like my husband can run errands and he can do things. He putzes around like better than me. He's told me I can't retire while he's alive. Like I need to have purpose. I am hardcore that way. And I think that Claire is the same way. So I have a lot of empathy for her and what motivates her. Like I don't think she's motivated by the feminist cause at all. And I know that that's the writers putting that burden on her to be a feminist. Well, I think she was a feminist in her own way, but this wasn't her feminist flag waving. I'm doing this because I'm a feminist. She was doing it because she had to. She couldn't not. There was no not being a doctor. There was no moving forward. I mean, she had to do it. She was compelled to do it. And this is where she and Jamie are so much alike. He was compelled to protect his family, compelled to make them safer, compelled to make sure that they had some money, and he went to prison. That was his purpose. His purpose was those people when he didn't have Claire anymore. And he realized that. And he got brought back to life in that. Even if it was momentary, we don't know. So Frank got serious raw deal, man. Hardcore bad. I think that Claire wounded him pretty seriously. And in the episode, I think she was trying and she didn't know what else to do. And she was lying to herself that she could have their sexual needs met by each other, but she wasn't following the rules of etiquette at all. And she thought she could hide it from him, that she could hide where her heart was at and where her mind was at while sharing her body with him. Oh, he knows her too well. He loves her too much, and he's too sensitive to her needs not to pick up on it. So what are we going to see from Frank this season? I mean, did you watch the preview from next week? Holy Toledo, was that like on fire? I think now things will slow just a bit. Like this was so rapid fire. Like the first episode was slow. It was basically in a couple of days for Jamie. It was over kind of meandering through Claire's pregnancy, but it still felt paced for Frank and Claire. And this episode was like packed. So hopefully we're going to stop and see slow down a bit and be able to really see the nuances and see the development start churning instead of just getting us to a point in time or getting us to a place in time that we need to get to. That's how this episode felt a little rushed to me. I mean, this is a huge task. I mean, I'm glad I didn't have to write it because I never could have done it. But that's what I'm seeing in it. I mean, they really could have done 16 episodes instead of 13 and made good use of every single second and not wasting a bit. And so in that preview, we get to see more about Jamie going to prison and Lord John Grey. And we see that there's this huge row that's going to take place between Claire and Frank. And Frank sounds a bit drunk in the preview. I don't know if that was just me hearing it, but yeah, now we get to see this setup to where we saw with Bree and Claire at the end of season 2, or how Claire ended up widowed. Like what happened? What happened between her and Frank? So it'll be interesting to see their relationship dynamic because I want to know what happened in those 20 years. And now that we get to see Frank's perspective and we just don't get it from Claire's vantage point, I want to know. I mean, I like Frank. I don't necessarily like them together, but I think they could have been companionable and had a good marriage had Claire been able to let go of Jamie, because they'd already had a foundation before. Would it have been everything she wanted it to be? No. There would have been lots of strained times because she would still want to be a doctor, and he was still a man of his time, even though he wanted so hard to give her what she wanted and to help her grow into who she wanted to be. And I want to see him interact with Brianna as she grows up, because he's daddy to her. And I want to know what that looks like and what their family dynamic looks like, and how she felt so distant from Claire, and that they had to build these bridges. That we saw that there was a lot of brokenness between her and Claire. So I'm looking forward to that. So next episode looks like it's going to be, again, really good. And I'm not knocking this episode. It's a lot of material. I just felt rushed. And look at this podcast is over an hour and I'm not even done yet. So what things are you looking forward to? And I really do want to get your perceptions and your feedback and your comments, because I think they're important. So on the YouTube channel, which is A Dram of Outlander, I'm a C Word says, loved it. OMG, it was so good. Watched it twice. And then Deanne Pembroke said, if I could get a hold of Bonnie Prince Charlie, I could wring his bloody, arrogant, delusional neck. One of the great tragedies in our history of all those lives lost. I thought the demise of Blackjack was rather anticlimactic after all the grief he caused. LOL. I wanted to see him pay. And then Kay Racine said, saw it twice on demand, once on my laptop and then on regular cable stars when it premiered on the 10th. Some other comments I wanted to share. One was from Gina Wiseman. Shout out to one of my girls. It was really good, except we don't know what happened to Murtaugh. Wow, just amazing, says Suzanne Cole Rice. Lisa Trout says, amazing, heartbreaking, hopeful, what a roller coaster of emotions. If this first episode is any indication of how the season will be, it'll be nothing short of awesome. Robin Perry Serber says, when Rupert left to face his fate was heartbreaking. Susan Westall, awesome first episode. I can see it as being very disturbing to those that haven't read the books and don't know what to expect. I find it interesting that no one knew what happened to Murtaugh. Makes me say, Robin Perry Serber says, watched it by myself at 5 a.m., then again when my husband woke up. He has not disappointed, so thrilled to see these characters again. Deborah Gommel says, came home late last night from being with grandkids and decided if I was still up to cheat and watch on demand. Well, I stayed up and it was worth it. No, Murtaugh is dead. Watching the open scenes with everyone dead on the field, you will see him lying there. I don't think it's him, though, because I watched on an even bigger screen. And several of us watched many times. Looking at other comments, everyone wants to know what the bunny rabbit means. And I was thinking today with the bunny rabbit references, because I referenced Bree's bunny. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot to put in there about Claire and Frank being in twin beds. Zuta lore. At the end, when he looked happy to go to sleep, and they panned out and they were in twin beds. Dang. So yes, the whole fireplace incident totally threw Frank off. They were done. So it seems, with that part of their life. So people want to know about Murtaugh. They want to talk about the bird and the bunny. So please give me your comments. And if you're on Facebook, on the Facebook group, you have to ask to join it on the Facebook page, both under A Dram of Outlander. I put up a post that is for all the episode responses. And the reason is that everyone doesn't have on demand to watch early. And if you're watching early, you want to be able to talk about it. I wanted a place that would keep others from getting spoiled until they watch it. So I always put up a picture that says, like today or this week it was S3 E2 episode thread. And everything is kept in there to discuss the episode from the time it airs on demand until after. That way people can freely discuss and enjoy. So that brings us to, where do you find A Dram of Outlander? Well, of course, you can find me at the website, adramofoutlander.com. Twitter and Instagram is Dram of Outlander. No A in front. There was no room. Facebook is A Dram of Outlander page and group. The group is smaller than the page, a little bit more intimate space for conversation. And Tumblr is A Dram of Outlander as well. Please go to the website and check out the giveaway that's going on right now for the next 6 days. And if you'd like to help support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/A Dram of Outlander. I'm a solo person who does all the production, all the editing, and all the maintenance of the podcast and the site and doing all of that. So if you'd like to financially support me, you can do a one-time offering, or you can go to the Patreon page and pledge a monthly offering. And I so appreciate you, and definitely always look forward to the help that you all give me. If you ever would like to come on and be a guest host on the podcast, shoot me an email, leave a voicemail. Again, it's contact@adramofoutlander.com or 719-425-9444. Or you can always PM me through social media as well, through the Dram of Outlander timelines, pages, etc. Don't forget about Wednesday nights, A Dram of Outlander chat. Over on Twitter, it's #ADOO. It's a lot of fun. You all are smart people. And be on the lookout for Outlander Science Club from Karen Doherty, Outlander Medicine, and myself. And I think that's it. This super long podcast. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening, playing along. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for making this podcast a success. I always am looking forward to your feedback. I want to know what improvements I could make. I want to know why you listen and why you keep coming back. I appreciate you. Until next time, Slán je va.